Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We have an absolutely wonderful panel for us today. Some of the smartest people in the crypto industry right now, and talking about one of the greatest topics in the crypto industry, which is scaling blockchains towards mass adoption. So, my name is Piers Ridyard. I am the CEO of Radix DLT, a public ledger focused on giving DeFi builders everything they need to obsolete traditional finance by decentralizing the $360 trillion global financial industry. Today I'm joined by four titans of the public ledger industry, each of whom have an incredible background, and I will give you a fast introduction now before we get onto the first topics. Firstly, we have Evan Shapiro, CEO of the Mina Foundation and co-creator of Mina, the world's lightest blockchain that manages to keep the entire state of a ledger in a mere 22 kilobytes, which is the same size as a single tweet. A self-professed computer science and crypto geek, and the secret of Mina blockchain comes from their fascinating use of zero-knowledge proofs to roll up huge amounts of information into tiny amounts of verifiable data. Mina is optimizing blockchain size to achieve scalability. Next, we have Dr. Stan Kladko, a former physicist at Stanford University and co-founder of CTO of SKALE Labs, a layer 2 for Ethereum that adds scalability and functionality for decentralized applications. Stan's startup background comes from the traditional Web 2.0 infrastructure space, and he and the SKALE Lab teams is working hard to bring that flexibility and power to decentralized ledgers to make it easy to build richly featured, highly scalable decentralized applications on Ethereum. SKALE is achieving application-specific layer 2 sidechains to achieve scale. Next, we have Professor Ben-Sasson, a giant of mathematics and cryptography who founded Zcash. He also helped build practical implementations of ZK snarks, advised Ethereum on the inclusion of those primitives into the Ethereum public ledger, and is behind much of the layer 2 scaling technology that is being built by so many teams on Ethereum today. He's also one of the co-creators or the creator of ZK Starks, which is another profound breakthrough in scalable, transparent proof systems. Eli is president and co-founder of Starkware and is building incredible breakthroughs in zero-knowledge proof systems to add incredible scalability to decentralized applications like DYDX. I summarize that as creating application-specific, as creating application scalability through transparent zero-knowledge proofs. Lastly, we have Professor Emin, CEO of Avalanche, professor of computer science at Cornell University, author of a paper on selfish mining, which is the third most cited paper in the crypto space after the Bitcoin white paper and the Ethereum white paper. He created a number of different consensus algorithms that are behind other platforms that you guys will have heard of, like Waves and Eternity. He's the co-author of the Avalanche consensus algorithm and architect behind the public decentralized ledger Avalanche, a rapidly growing, innovative decentralized ledger that has recently crossed the $14 billion market cap and has over $4.5 billion in total value locked in its DeFi ecosystem. A fantastic panel. So, we have three topics for discussion today. The first topic is going to be a picture painting exercise. What does mainstream scale mean for the crypto space? And let's have some spine-tingling ideas about what the opportunity is here. So I'm going to start with Gun.
Sure. Whoa, this is very loud. But okay, so the thing that gets me out of bed every morning, the thing that gets me really, really excited, and the vision behind Avalanche is not to compete with the dollars of the world. It is not to compete with euros of the world. That's a great fight. That's a fight for others. It is not to build an internet computer. That's interesting. It's a good play box. It's a good sandbox. So other people are doing it. That is not what we're after. We are here to digitize all of the world's assets. We built a system from the ground up that has at its core the notion of an asset. If you look at other systems, they don't. Assets are add-ons. The miners or the validators involved in those systems don't even know what they're dealing with. In Avalanche, an asset is a first-class abstraction, and our goal, the thing that gets me super excited, is to open up for everybody's consumption, trade, and transfer those assets that are currently lying inert on people's balance sheets. There's about 72 trillion of assets in the world. Money is just one of them. And our goal is to take those assets and to open them up and to take them out of silos guarded by middlemen and to turn them into things that anybody can trade flat in a flat universe without having to seek permission from anybody else. That's our vision. It's very, very simple and quite different, it turns out. Even though it's so simple to express, it's quite different from everybody else's or many other coins operation and goal. That's us.
That's awesome. Awesome. Evan?
Yes. I think the way that we usually often think about this is crypto has reached a point now where it kind of feels like it's getting usability within the crypto native ecosystem. But it has a long way to go before it's something that kind of the regular person is actually using. And one thing we think about a lot is what tools kind of remain to get built in order to make that possible. So particularly from the zero-knowledge proof angle, there are things like identity that you don't want to put your social security number on chain, but you do want to be able to identify yourself for some applications, or putting things like your financial history or your social media data or other things that are like you're going to need to interact with the crypto world, but you don't want to just like put on chain. Things like zero-knowledge proofs gives you a way to start doing that in a way that keeps privacy. So I think that where we are now, we're missing a lot of those primitives still. So that's something that we think a lot about, and I think will be a key to getting it to like this really mainstream level, as you have mentioned.
That's awesome. Stan?
Yeah, so when we actually went to VCs like in 2017 and created SKALE, the vision that we sold to VCs was that we're going to take Web 2 and move it to Ethereum-compatible Web 3, essentially replacing every website with a blockchain. And we talked about things like decentralized Uber, decentralized Google. Drivers pay to Uber 30% every time. They hate it. You could create a Uber where drivers pay 0. You could decentralize Google, Twitter. Actually asked on Twitter which company people want to decentralize most. And they say Google. Google is such a crappy company. I remember, when I first saw Google in 1999, they were just a fantastic search engine. And now you search Google, and they just shovel into you this information which you just don't need. It's just total crap, I think. So, and my personal reason why I got so excited, definitely it's such an interesting field, but another thing is that it allows us to solve problems that seem to be unsolvable. Like, in our world, basically what we have is that we have Wall Street, and we have Washington, D.C., and we have people in Washington, D.C. printing money, and this money goes into the Wall Street, and people in the third world pay for it. So there's pretty much no way for these people in the third world to actually get out of this crappy life they have, and I think blockchain provides this way. And that's actually one of the reasons we think at SKALE that we really like what we do.
It's awesome. Ellie?
So looking around the world, one could be a bit dystopian. A lot of our information is now harvested, packaged, and monetized by these big trusted parties. And we're not happy with that. We sort of woke up and realized that that's not the way it should be. And it happened very quickly, right? And of course, the more we move things of importance over to the virtual and digitized world, the more this is hurting us. So, but of course, the answer to that is, democratizing and decentralizing again, and that's exactly what blockchains at their core offer. They offer this more democratic notion where the root of trust is not based on, big trusted parties, be they banks or Googles or whatnot, but it should be sort of made in a way that everyone is invited to inspect the integrity of the full system, and that's what blockchains deliver. However, they have this issue of scale. They have several issues, but one of them is one of scale. And what really gets me up in the morning and very excited is the fact that there's this technology based on very deep math and cryptography that goes back a few decades that is just perfectly fit for empowering blockchains to reach even greater scale. And what Starkware is doing, and there are others as well doing that, O of One and Mina and many others, Zcash and others, it's a big effort across many teams, is using this amazing technology coming from cryptography, science, math, and using it to reach massive scale and offer privacy and a lot of good things. So that's number one thing that gets me up in the morning. Number two is, of course, just having this amazing team of collaborators that are just innovating in ways that I could never imagine. And more concretely, seeing that the things that we're now doing with our technology is, allowing DYDX to reach a TPS that is higher than Bitcoin and at times higher than Ethereum's for a fraction of the gas cost. And even more concretely seeing, being able to tell my kids that something like TikTok is deploying using our technology. That's something that now, they start having respect for, dad, that he's doing something that is of interest to the world.
So everything that matters in our life, our money, our identity, the services that we interact with, and the way that we are able to actually provide those at a cost-effective way, these are all the things that are going to be touched by blockchain and blockchain scalability.
Yes.
We have a really interesting panel from the point of view of there's a kind of split here, which I'm going to make into a little debate, right? So on one side we have the incredible guys who are building on the existing infrastructure like Ethereum and making Ethereum more scalable and making existing layer ones more scalable. On the other side, we have guys who are coming in and saying, no, we need new infrastructure. We need to create new layer ones because these layer ones we already have are not really providing everything that we need to get to that next level of adoption and scalability. So what I'm going to do is a little debate. Now, just to be clear, not everything that everyone says here is necessarily their 100% like dyed-in-the-wall opinion, but I'm going to create a segmentation between these two sides just for the sake of this, and we're going to have a debate on this house believes we don't need new layer 1 protocols. We can just upgrade what we have. So I'm going to start, Stan, if you would like to start.
Yeah, let's artificially insult the other part here. So I think, if you think about blockchain, I think my perspective is that it's very much the same as like Homebrew Club. If you guys know about Homebrew Club that existed before Apple, like lots of people are doing interesting things. There's not yet, I think, like a Steve Jobs figure in this space that can like take everything and like, drive it. So, but if you look at Homebrew Club, at that time already a C programming language existed, and many things that were done using C programming language. So from this perspective, when we at Scale sold our startup to VCs and investors, we said, Solidity is such an important language, and EVM and all of the things, and MetaMask. We're gonna do this decentralized web, but we're gonna support Ethereum, MetaMask, because there's so much momentum, developers use it. And that's why we at Scale are building decentralized web, but we are making it fully compatible with Ethereum. And we think that Ethereum will definitely continue as money. In the past, people thought maybe Bitcoin still becomes continues to be like number one. Now, many people are thinking that Bitcoin may be in danger. So I think in the future, Ethereum stays to be the most important money, and then it may be that NFTs may even surpass the value of Ethereum because there's so much momentum. The NFTs is literally like the beginning of decentralized web. But the main point is that why we stay with the current way is just because there's so much momentum behind existing Solidity and all other things.
Okay, so much momentum, already established ecosystem. Let's go and support that. We can scale it to what we need. Good.
So my opinion is that we just don't, we must build from scratch. We must start from new layer ones and actually create protocols that scale. Scale is not something you can add on or tack on to something that exists. So what you're doing whenever you do a layer 2 protocol, in fact, I'm going to take all of those layer 2 protocols, layer 2, whatever rollups, layer 2 protocols, Lightning Network, whatever else you might have. I'm going to take them all and I'm going to brand them as what you already know as side chains. To a first approximation, they're just side chains. They're a way to take load off of the underlying chain to elsewhere. That's great. And the side chain idea is really compelling, and yet not done properly by anybody yet. And the side chain idea is essentially a way to tack something on and complicate the existing underlying protocol to try to get at what you truly want, which is scale. It's much better, much more elegant to build scale into your protocol from the ground up, as opposed to trying to tack it on after the fact. There are a couple of things that you do want to retain. And there are things that are really valuable in this space. The tooling is valuable. So Stan's point stands. He's correct that people are used to the EVM interface, and you don't want to break that or change it. If the users are used to using, say, MetaMask, for example, even though MetaMask is actually terrible to use, that's what the installed user base actually likes. So you need to preserve that. So that's true. So you want to preserve tooling. That's correct. You want to preserve communities. That's correct. But we are in no way wedded to the old technology that was developed only 10 years ago. The oldest of these is Bitcoin. It's only 11 years old. Do we really want to add on layers upon layers upon layers onto this existing thing that wasn't all that amazing in the first place? It only achieved 3 TPS, so we could add a couple more layers onto it. But that's not what's going to take us to where we want to go. If you want to really digitize all of the world's assets, you need to reach another level of scale, and that's not something you can tack on. So, end result, you do want to preserve communities, you want to preserve tools, but you are in no way wedded to the protocols that we consider legacy, even though they're so young. If you want to know how you end up where Wall Street is today, they end up like this. You take what you have, you add another layer, you add another layer, and then you've got the software stack at Goldman, which is layers upon layers, and they want to shed that. They want to come over to our technology because it is so flat, so fast. So it's much better, much more elegant, much more technically reasonable to come up and build scale into layer 1 than to try to add it via these disparate mechanisms that at the end of the day simply fracture your liquidity. And that is one of the most precious things you have in a financial game. They fracture your user base. They fracture your developer base. I don't know how any of these layer 2s are going to interact with each other. There is no coherent protocol for taking, optimism and making it talk to this and that, etc. So if you go that route of tacking things on, it's kind of like browsers with their extensions that will never be able to come back together and talk to each other again.
So don't make the mistakes that have already been made, like banks still on mainframes. Take this young industry and create a foundation that we can actually build on properly. Ellie.
Okay, so I don't know if only Ethereum will survive or 2 other chains or 5 or 20. I don't know. And I don't know if L2s are going to be sufficient or not. I very strongly believe that any solution that's going to scale to reach really, the kind of things that the conventional world needs is going to need things like Starks. Both for sort of allowing a single party that need not be trusted to run very massive computations and still prove its integrity to the large set of nodes that is needed for decentralization, and it's also needed for privacy. So I'm very sure that this technology will be needed. Now, 4 years ago when we founded Starkware, this was, towards the end of 2017, everyone was ICOing left and right, and everyone said to us, you need to ICO. And we said, no, we're not. This doesn't make sense. This is technology. It does, it's not sort of some monetary policy or something, and it doesn't make sense that new technology means necessarily new coins. So that's the decision we made back then. And since then, we've basically said wherever we find a place that right now is reaching the burning need for scale and we can deploy this technology on, we will. So that's why we did it first on Ethereum. We would have loved to do it on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a bit more conservative, but we would love to deploy it there as well and help their scale and make TPS grow there. And we'll be very happy to deploy it someday on Avalanche and any other L1 that needs it. So I don't know if I can understand that a panel is more interesting if there's like a lot of blood out there, but our view currently is more of a mercenary kind of thing. We have a very cool weapon at hand, and anyone who needs it, we would like to help them use it. It's a very potent, weapon, of course, is not the right term. It's a very beneficial technology that everyone needs.
Very cool. Awesome. Let's have a quick show of hands. So who thinks that we need to, we can upgrade existing infrastructure and we don't need new layer 1s? Hands up. Who thinks that? Who thinks that we need new layer 1s and we need to start again? I think the layer ones have it. New layer ones, very good. Well done. All right, okay. Moving on to topic 3, which is, as an industry, we often talk about scaling towards mainstream adoption as purely a technical problem, but it's also a very human one. What else do we still need to nail to get to the next 100 million users? And Ellie, we'll start with you.
Okay, obviously there's a scale, but we'll get there. There are all kinds of things of like, clearing up the regulatory, rules of the game, and I'm sure that things will be more clear over time, okay? I think that beyond that, something that I became recently quite passionate about, and I'm reading a whole lot about it, is decentralized macroeconomic theory, which means, if you go back to Bitcoin, that sort of set the tone for everything. The monetary policy there is amazingly innovative, beautiful. There's a but it's also extremely simplistic. There's a very simple rule of issuance that, at a fixed predictable rate that is independent of the, needs or evolution of the ecosystem that supports it. And it, of course, it's very good on one side because it's completely predictable and the amount of coins out there is always known and you can know it in the future. But a lot of the volatility and unpredictableness of the monetary power is due to this. So a huge challenge is to take decentralized systems and somehow converge them with a monetary theory that is one that sort of can relate the ecosystem and what it needs with the rules of issuance and burning. So that's, I think, a third aspect that I recently became very interested in. And I think it also, in addition to having scale, regulatory clarity, which both of these things are going to be resolved, I think sort of going back to the basics and asking what is money about, who decides on what and how should it function, which are very deep questions. Part of this process I started reading about the existing theories around monetary systems and so on. And this is even prior to things like quantitative easing. And it's very, you feel like the ground is dropping under your feet and you don't understand what's going on. And then you talk to people who are devising these monetary policies in central banks, and you hear from them the same thing. So I think we need also to go back to the basics and figure out what it is that money is, and then try to understand what money should be in the context of decentralized cryptocurrencies. That's the third aspect.
So why do you think that money, like the definition of money, is important for mass adoption of crypto? Like why do we need to change what we already have as a definition of money?
For one, we already have all the cryptocurrencies, okay, except for various stable coins, which are then sort of pegging off of some other mechanism that is sort of managing some other goals, like price stability and, maybe employment within national, boundaries. All the other cryptocurrencies are extremely volatile and very hard to work with. So that's the reason for all these stable coins sort of being so essential in various parts of the crypto economic world. Now, this is a side effect of the fact that the cryptocurrencies out there have monetary policies that are very algorithmic, simplistic, but they don't react very well to the economic conditions of the ecosystem they serve. So I think just for like mass adoption and sole reliance on cryptocurrencies as opposed to having stable coins all the time, I think it's also essential to have some monetary theory that will eventually lead to a little bit more price stability, even without pegging.
So you're thinking for like native cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Bitcoin or something like that, or you're thinking of things that are aping national currency, so like a synthetic version of the dollar, or making a cryptocurrency like Ethereum more stable? Like which of the?
I think the latter, either Ethereum. Bitcoin again, I think is just too conservative. So Bitcoin is going to do what Bitcoin does, which is reach 21 million coins around 2140, whatever the size of the economy around it is. But there's room for innovation and understanding, and that's a missing link right now. What is this? Decentralized but reactive monetary policy. And then once it's out there, either existing cryptocurrencies could sort of adapt to it, those who are willing to. I'm assuming Bitcoin is not going to change just because it's very conservative, and it's fine. And once we have sort of that kind of theory or set of theories, then could be national CBDCs that might try to do it, or other, decentralized cryptos that might try.
Okay, so better stores of value. Evan, like you've done a lot of thinking on governance as well, haven't you guys?
Yeah, I think in particular for this, I think a lot of the existing crypto infrastructure is built to suit the technology, so you have to be aware of that layer under the hood, or private keys and whatever. The human version of crypto that'll really go out there is a version that doesn't require people to kind of bring on all those details from the crypto world into their interaction with their applications. Maybe sort of the same way that, like, you click a save icon on a computer, you don't have to. Like, I don't know what you would do instead, but but basically, yeah, like I think that in particular, if you think about things like governance, it's like, how are we going to get to a world where people can collectively think about their interactions about owning a cryptocurrency and the direction of that cryptocurrency when they're like a normal person? I don't have the answer to that, but that's like the sort of thing that I think that we as an industry have to figure out and start solving if we're going to start bringing this to a wider audience.
So how people think about the human experience of crypto, and whether or not and how they become stakeholders in those systems in a way that isn't like massively technical.
Yeah, like I think I don't have an answer right now, but it's a huge question.
Like one of the interviews I heard from you, you were talking about this idea of like having a venue, like there's some prerequisites, right? And one of which is just having a good venue for discussion. Like, do you think that's something that we have to do better to get to more scalable adoption for crypto?
Totally. I think that with any of these cryptos, there is a core community that is the ones that are really kind of driving the tech forward. And I think it's still the space is figuring out this kind of like implicit hidden layer of like, okay, you like see all these things that happen and tweets and marketing and stuff, but what's really going behind the scenes is these people that are collaborating together and building these structures. And the structures right now are very implicit, and no one's, I think, like kind of cracked it for like, how do we build like an arbitrarily scalable collective organization that is distributed and decentralized? I think that when you see that to start to happen, that'll be a place where both like, A, this stuff can start out-competing traditional companies and hierarchies, and B, it can build something that is, hopefully, I would like to think, kind of has our more collective interest at heart, which I think is kind of the real destiny of crypto. And if it can achieve that in a mainstream scale, it would be very exciting, to me at least.
It's really cool. Stan?
Yeah, I think, I think there are two things which are missing now. One thing is, when we went to the VCs in 2017, again, we told to the VCs that we said, we understand that every disruptive technology will have this hype curve of bubble and then bust, and then people will start building more like long-term things. And I'm not saying that I'm like looking for a bust, but we are really missing like people and projects that go long-term and design these decentralized Airbnbs or decentralized Ubers or decentralized social networks. Many people just do like another clone of like Uniswap, right? So one thing which we're missing is just startups that actually go for longer term and more ambitious goals. And the second thing which is missing is, we should be able to do the entire like Web2 experience on Web3. And there has been lots of progress, but still there are some pieces missing. Like you can, with Gmail, you can easily identify, is it a human or a bot? Have this Google CAPTCHA. How do we do CAPTCHA on blockchain? How do we make all of this experience the same on Web3 as it is on Web2? And at Scale, we've been doing lots of research and actually coding to work on different parts of the thing. So you can now actually, from Ethereum virtual machine on Scale, you can stream music, you can watch videos. And we're actually working on that. So there are two things. First, people have to start looking for long-term projects. I'm not saying we need Bust for this, but maybe it would help. And the second thing, we need to have the full experience of Web2 and Web3.
Right.
to get to this.
Right, so we like in our rush to move to a Web3 style of user interaction, user experience, we're losing some of the things that Web2 actually created in the first place.
We need a total copy, not a copy, but we need total features and abilities. You know?
And how hard do you think that process is going to be in recreating great web-like experiences?
I think we solved quite a number of problems already, and it's become much better. For instance, things like Uniswap, it's a huge progress now, because you can exchange any token for any other token. It has never happened in the history of the humankind that any time any person on the surface of this planet can exchange any currency, cryptocurrency. You can't do it with dollars and euro. Your bank will be closed. So we have these things with the new things in the infrastructure, but we still need to fix some things. One of the important things is identity. You know, how do we differentiate humans from bots, and how do we do it in a decentralized way?
Yeah, that's a huge topic on itself. Absolutely. Good.
So very quickly, I think there are a couple of challenges up ahead of us for us to achieve true full mass adoption. First one is scale, and I think Ellie said we will get there. We will. There are big steps that we've already taken. We couldn't have gotten there with 3 TPS, with 15 TPS. We need the kinds of protocols that can give us actual throughput and very quick time to finality. So Avalanche achieves less than 1 second right now, and can do 3 times what Visa can do. So I think that's a huge step up. So that's step one. That's the kind of throughput that we need if we're going to be able to act as a medium of exchange for a point-of-payment system. Second thing that we need are application-specific subnetworks or jurisdiction-specific subnetworks. So as they stand, most blockchains are one-size-fits-all solutions. Bitcoin is Bitcoin for the entire globe. There's one Bitcoin network, and it's supposed to serve everybody's needs. And so, you know, Bitcoin does what it does incredibly well. I'm very proud of that, but it can't be specialized or customized for any specific use. That's part of its value proposition, actually. But if you actually go talk to enterprises, if you talk to people with valuable assets in their hands, they have actual entanglements. There are laws that actually bear on them. Those laws can change at any time. They need control over the full life cycle of their assets. And the only way to do this are domain-specific blockchains. So one of the things that we did in Avalanche is we have this notion of subnets. So you can create a US-centric subnet separate from the Avalanche's default networks that is specific to your needs. Or if you have an IoT set of IoT devices, you can create an IoT subnet as shielded from what's happening in DeFi that day. So you don't get this behavior that happens on Ethereum where there's a DeFi thing happening and every other application that day is unusable because the fees have gone through the roof. So those are those 2 things. Third thing, in the short term, I think there's going to be a bridging game. There's going to be a bunch of, essentially there's going to be some chains that everybody wants to use, and we're going to need bridges to take the valuable assets from wherever they may have been created, legacy, to those chains where they are actually best put to use. So we're going to see this bridge game play out, I would suspect, for the next year or so. And we spent a lot of time on our bridge technology, our trustless bridge, that allows us to bridge to Ethereum at the moment, to be able to bring valuable things over. The fourth thing that is also very crucial is governance. I think Evan mentioned this. In Avalanche, the ethos is always open things up. Allow the people to speak. They know what's best. And that's much better than a cabal telling you, well, this is what's going to be the interest rate, etc., for your coin. So those governance structures are yet to be worked out. The DAOs that we have so far are, I think, in their early days. And I think there's a lot more work to be done in that space. But the first steps, I think, we've begun to take as a community. And I'm really excited about where this is going to take us.
That's really interesting. A couple of questions. With the subnets idea, why is a subnet not more like going back towards a permission state?
Oh, it could. That's what it gives you. So you could create a subnet where you say, for you to be active in the subnet, you need permission from me. And then now you have the good old permissioned private blockchains from before, from like a couple years ago. So if you want that, you can go there. Every one of those projects that did that has been a failure, right? We don't see these private permissioned blockchains in actual use by companies. So what we give you is a slider. You can go there if you want. You can start there if you like, but you can then move towards public chains. You can say, look, I will open my chain up to, for example, anybody from the US. Now, it doesn't have to be vetted by me, but these identity providers are acceptable to me. Or you can say, I can open my subnet up to anybody who has the following hardware characteristics. I'm going to run it at a higher speed, and so on and so forth. You determine what the gating factor is for somebody to be a member of that subnet. So now you have this, slider, and you can just say, look, it's open. And now you have a public subnet. So it's up to you. And my sort of hidden agenda is that most people are very comfortable starting with the very first point, and they almost always find themselves wanting to go towards the other side. And so give them that slider. They will for sure find themselves within a year or two of deployment wanting to move to the left, to where the public blockchains are, and that's our actual funnel into our big ecosystem. The very first bite is free, and then once you get the taste of these networks, then you will want to move to the public chains.
It's interesting because, like, obviously the internet had similar issues in terms of jurisdiction and the concept of, and like actually a lot of people don't know this, but France tried to create their own internet, which was separate from the rest of the internet.
Minitel.
Yeah. So, are we talking about the idea that we're kind of giving people entry drugs towards a open permissionless systems, and we think long term the rules are going to change, or are you saying that finance is different, and so actually we have to build in a different way to be able to get the global financial system into these networks?
I think the latter. I think we need to give people the tools that they need for their legal departments to be happy. So without that, you don't get mass deployment, you don't get enterprises coming into this system. So you have to allow them to say, look, this is my private network, I understand what happens on it. And then give them the tools by which they can connect. Remember how the internet started? It started on campuses with local Ethernet deployments. And then each campus was like, hey, it would be so cool if I kind of had a long-distance connection to another campus. That's the kind of thing you can do with Avalanche subnets. You can have assets on one, talk to and communicate with or be swappable with assets on another. So that's kind of like that bridging. And once you get the taste for this, remember how hard it was when the internet was starting out. I remember trying to explain email to my parents. It was such a hard concept to get across, right? People were using private messaging systems that were sort of all individual islands, and once you bridge, it's like a different universe. So that's what we enable, and then of course the bet here is by doing that we're going to be able to funnel everybody in to a much larger ecosystem that's interoperable.
Interesting, really interesting. Can I just get a quick time check because it was a slightly lighter time anyway. How long have we got? Anyone? How long? 7. Thank you very much. All right, cool. We'll do one more set of questions then. So,
we could take from the audience.
We could take from the audience. Do people have some questions? Can we see some hands if people have got some questions they want to ask? Excellent. Yeah, go for that person first.
Hello. Yeah. The silly version of my question is like, how many TPS is enough? But the more serious version is something like, which of the two views of the world, L1 versus L2 to LN, is a better design for something like Jevons paradox? You have an increase in efficiency that's eaten up by more consumption. So like, does that speak to which of your views of the world to all panelists, I guess?
So let me take that to take a first stab at the question. So first of all, TPS is an incredibly misleading metric, and it's as you well point out. And I think it's the easiest metric to game. And there is at least certainly one chain I have in mind that games the crap out of it. But let me tell you guys how to game it. I've been a researcher at Cornell for many years. I've seen my colleagues who work in databases, game that metric all day long for publication. Here's how you game it. Suppose we all build a supremely slow system. It makes one decision per day. And so that's one transaction per day. We could be honest and say, look, this is very slow. We kind of suck at this game. We're not even a player. We didn't even try. It was one transaction per day. Or we could do the following thing. Instead of making one decision per day on one transaction, we collate all the transactions into a giant thing that's kind of like a phone book, and then we take the Merkle root hash of it, and then we make a decision on the root hash. And so now, but suppose I put 1 million transactions, my speed went up to 1 million transactions per day. I posit to you that you don't want to use a system that makes one decision per day, okay? It's a damn slow system. So almost everybody out there who's reporting TPS numbers is playing some version of this game, so disregard TPS. The metric that is hard to mess with, the metric that's hard to lie about, is time to finality. So that's the thing to focus on. So ours is very easy to measure. It's on our website. It's about 717 milliseconds. It's less than a second. So like a slow blink, and it's final, it's immutable, it's done. And if I look at our competitors, they're like at least a factor of 4 to a factor of 1 million slower than that. So that's the answer to the first question, is how many TPS are enough? Forget TPS. Let's look at time to finality. That's, I think, our best measure of speed. And then on the layer 2 question, maybe let me succinctly say something else. There is no such thing as layer 2. You've got a system here, and you've got another system there, okay? And some systems are built from the ground up for scale, and they're elegantly designed to give you that. And other systems are not, and then they try to patch stuff on. But that's still an evolved new system. It's got the L1 core, it's got the L2 accoutrements. Those things don't talk to each other. They're not designed by the same unifying architect. And therefore, you've got essentially a patchwork of liquidity which divides that system up. So I posit to you again that you don't want that second world. I think you want to be in the first one where there's a single, coherent, elegant way to get at liquidity. So that's sort of my 2 stabs at that question.
If I may. The more bandwidth you'll have, you'll see new types of applications coming on. So, for instance, more scale, you'll see TPS, expand, not TPS, sorry, NFTs, which are very static, expanding into like full gameplay and beyond. You'll see, more collaborative editing of files and art on the blockchain. And beyond that, I can't envision. But just like with bandwidth on cellular, you bring more, and you'll see new functionality, like video calls today, right? More, we'll get more stuff. So I think that's the way to think of it.
I just want to add just a couple of words to what Eli said, is that, in 60s, people thought that the future would be a huge, like a super main computer. Everyone would do calculations on these things. And this future died, it crashed. And what we have, actually, internet is a collection of reasonably working, weakly coupled computers. So the weakly coupled system actually won over the strongly coupled system. That's why I think what's going to happen, the future of internet is going to be many weakly coupled systems. And these many weakly coupled systems will have, reasonable performance. TPS doesn't really matter. You don't know how much computing power your Facebook server is, because Facebook has so many servers. You don't care. So people, it's not so important how fast a particular blockchain is. The important is the actual system, how it works together.
Those weakly coupled systems we call subnets.
Thank you very much. One more question. This guy down here, if that's all right. Now you got a mic.
Do you think proof of work will be obsolete in the future?
I hope it is, because of the carbon footprint. I hope. I don't know.
I also hope I hope too, but I must say that a proof of stake blockchain has probably 10 times more code and 10 times harder to secure. It's just more complex. So I hope we'll get to this point, but it will take us some turbulence to fix all of the bugs.
I want to say the ultimate solution we want to reach, but it's hard, is going back to proof of identity, which isn't solved right now because of Sybil. But really, if you think, democracy is a beautiful idea, right? So you would really want to solve proof of identity, and then bring it back to people, which is what it's all about.
So I don't want to make a normative statement here. We are open to chains that actually generate coins via proof of work.
Right.
And so those are wonderful. They're fine. Until recently, proof of work was the best way of getting decentralization in the blockchain. So that's how it was. Moving forward, my personal opinion, this is not Avalabs or anything else. My personal opinion is we should not be melting the poles. It's just a bad idea. There is a lot of better uses for any source of energy other than, just essentially getting a bunch of miners who are well connected, have mining rigs to get richer by adding blocks to a chain. And how many do you have? At the end of the day, they coalesce into cartels. Into mining pools, and then, for any given chain, there are only a few dozen of them. You don't even get meaningful decentralization out of proof of work. So proof of stake has some really appealing properties, like better security. The amount of economics that are going to secure the chain is typically far higher. It's only 1 to 2% for a proof of work chain, and it can be as high as 70, 80% for a proof of stake chain. And you can get much better carbon footprint, and we leave a better universe for our children. So I think it's a much better thing to look forward to. But as everyone said, it's not an easy process. The technology is being essentially playing out even as we speak.
All right, well, that's been an amazing panel. Thank you, everyone, for your attention, and give them all a big hand.